Well, hello there. Welcome to today's live stream. In this live stream, we'll be covering what we've been watching and also reviewing a movie. If you like the sound of that, stay tuned and let's get into it. So, what have you been watching lately?
So since we did our last live stream on Friday, over the weekend, I watched a new show called Four Seasons. It was on Netflix. It said it was the number one watch show at the moment on Netflix. I saw that it had Steve Carell in it, and Tina Fey was one of the writers and actresses in it. I was thinking it was going to be a comedy, but it wasn't really. It was more of a drama about three couples that do couple holidays over, I don't know if it's said it, I'm assuming it's over 4 years. They end up going on a holiday coincidentally in each season of the year over 4 years. So they start off with a spring holiday, and then they have a summer holiday, and they have a winter holiday, and I think the last one's going to be like autumn or something. So follows that, and it's basically just breaking down the different types of relationships. We've got a couple that have kind of out of love, and one wants to leave. We've got a couple that have kind of still in love and they've been together for a very long time, and then we've got a same-sex couple, two males, and all the differences and problems with all those types of relationships. And yeah, it feels quite real and raw, but definitely not comedy. So yeah, you get to see a lot of things that happen, with divorce and separating and splitting assets, to finding new younger lovers, to with the same-sex couple that they, like to introduce a third person to their relationship from time to time. So there's just lots of, eye-opening or like things to what goes on in different types of couples. So it's okay. I've got one episode to go. I think it's a worth watch. Was it amazing? No, but it's a pretty simple watch, and it's just a limited series, which I'm a big fan of. So that's all I've watched. What have you been watching this weekend?
I've been actually getting back into the movies, so I've been watching Until Dawn and Warfare, and the difference between the two of the filmmaking and story is like apples and oranges. Very different. Warfare is absolute superior movie. Until Dawn, to be honest, I think it's going to be one of my worst movies of this year. It's definitely going to be in the top 5 list. I wouldn't recommend watching the movie. It's not worth wasting your time at all. But Warfare, it's a beautiful movie in the way it's filmed, and also how it shows that story doesn't matter as much as the journey with the characters, and showing the horrificness of war, and that sometimes that means more than the story itself. And also, that's the main thing that I watched this weekend.
Yeah, that's a bit disappointing about Until Dawn.
Yeah.
I didn't finish the game, but it's very loved, and when I played of it, I thought it was gripping. I thought, oh, this would be a good movie. And then when you said it was coming out, I got excited. We watched the trailer, and it looked poor. Like, the trailer made it look bad. People I know that had played the game said it doesn't look like it's reflective of the game. So you've done the hard work. You've watched it for me and said don't waste my time. So I think I will probably take your recommendation for that and not watch it.
Yes.
So you watched the 2 movies over the weekend?
Yeah.
Nothing else?
No.
Okay, so we had a bit of a quiet weekend. 2 movies, that's a lot for you. You've increased your movies for the year substantially just there alone.
Trying to.
So let's get into the review of Warfare then.
Indeed.
So tell us what Warfare is. We know it's a movie that's not really plot-based, but explain what it is roughly to those who haven't seen it.
So the concept of Warfare is that it's set in 2006 in Iraq, and based on an operation that we don't know about because it's classified, but it's about these soldiers securing an area for whatever reason. It's very vague, this movie, but
It's based on true stories, so that's why that's vague. Obviously,
Yes.
there's details that we're not meant to know as civilians. So,
Yeah.
So there's a reason for it.
yes. But basically, the plot centers around watching, I would assume, hostile targets, and things in that nature, and then things escalate and drag into a very chaotic, spectacular film, and you're not seeing this movie for the plot, so that's why it's very vague describing this movie, because there's not much plot at all.
Yeah, so the movie is definitely to give you the experience of, even by the name itself, of what warfare is like. It really wants you to put you in the driver's seat of what war's like. It gives what I imagine would be a very realistic experience of war. And it's also, what makes it interesting, it's kind of a minute-by-minute movie. So it goes for 90 minutes, and it surrounds a mission that took place over a 90-minute period. And, you know, when they're in there and they're going, oh, they're 6 minutes away, in 6 minutes' time, such and such coming, it was down to the second they did that. So it really gave you a snapshot of what it was like to be at war over a 90-minute period, and that's crazy the things that can happen in that. So it was a very, very cool movie. Had a few notable actors and some I hadn't seen before. The main one would have been Clay's
the captain.
Yeah. Oh, who's the gold? Like, he's the gold superhero in the Marvel movies. Think of his name. British actor, and he's in The Bear. Let me look this up for you guys. Warfare. Sorry, I'll look him up. I'm looking. The person that I recognise was Will Poulton.
Yes.
Yeah. So look at this guy. He is in
Maze Runner.
Yeah, but he was in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, Adam Warlock.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, so he is probably the most notable person for me in it. What did you think about? So this movie, it literally goes from, like, I've not seen a movie with an opening scene like more like crazy than that.
Yes.
So it's like in a good way. So it starts off with them in a room watching like this
music video.
Yeah, music video for "Call on Me" and Eric Perez song that has, you know, girls provocatively dancing in like an exercise class thing, and like it's a pretty famous film clip, and it came out at obviously the same time as this war's going on. But I saw it in IMAX, and it was as loud as it could get. Like, this film just went from like, oh, what's this going to be, to be like, what? Like, I couldn't think of anything I think would have been, you know, if someone said you got access to an IMAX theater and you can put one thing on, I honestly reckon I probably would have put that film clip on. Like, it's just crazy that was the thing that came on, like, so loud in your face, and then it went to like one of the most darkest films I've ever seen. So yeah, definitely on the edge of your seat. So you want to get into the review for this?
Okay.
So we'll give some scores. You can see our scores from the other day. I just crossed them out, so I'll write it next to it. This is for, what did we review the other day? Mission Impossible. 83s and 86. So let's see how this goes in comparison to Mission Impossible. What do you give this for storytelling? A film that actually we didn't even know what it was about.
I'm going to give this a 5 because I liked that it didn't focus on the story that much, but unfortunately it would have been nice to know more, but that's not the main reason you're not watching it. But it's not a story-driven movie, but sometimes it is nice having story to get invested in what they're doing. But this is going to be the weakest score, so it has to, this is its weakest element, so it has to fail at something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to give it a low score because it has no story to tell. Well, no, it's not true. It does, but it doesn't tell you about it. But then, is that the beauty of it? Is that what makes it good? Because if they go into details, do you then pull it apart? Is it like less is more? I don't know. So I don't really want to mark it down because of it, because I didn't leave there going, I wish I knew more. It was kind of like, I get why they didn't do it. It made sense. So I won't give it a crazy score, but I might give it a 7, just because it did a good job of telling a story without telling a story. So I'll give it a 7. What about the cinematography? So we're talking visuals and sounds. I saw it in IMAX. You watched it at home. What do you give this?
I'm going to give this a 9 because I saw it at home. So for me, the effects and the shots and the plane coming in didn't impact me as much, but still it was very engaging with the bullets and everything. I wish I saw it in the cinema. That's why I can't give it a perfect 10, because it feels like this movie was built for the cinema experience. So that's why it gets a 9.
Well, I'm going to give it a 10 because I did see it in the cinemas.
Mm.
This, the bullets were shaking the floor. Like, the seats were moving, like, it was loud, you felt involved. I think it's one of the rare movies I've sat there and not, been obligated to want to check my phone or look around. Like, I was engaged the whole time, didn't want to miss anything. When they did their show of force, where they fly the planes low, and it was like, you could feel it rattling. So that was an experience for sure. Beyond that, even if I did watch it at home, it would have done very well regardless, because it was visually, it was raw. It didn't try, like, they obviously used practical effects opposed to visual effects, and I think they nailed and made you feel like you were there at war. It was extremely raw, so I'm going to give it a 10. What about the directing of this film? So I mentioned some of the things, like they had timed it. They made sure that it was a 90-minute snapshot. Did you feel the stakes were high? Did you feel like you were there? Did the director capture what it was trying to do? And I guess did it flow?
For this element, I'm going to give it a 10. I really enjoyed the director's. This shows with 90 minutes, you can do quite a lot. It felt that the movie started off with the music clip, but that was with purpose, because you knew stuff was going to escalate, and it kind of showed they're together and then things are going to happen. And then it started off very slow paced, but once it got going, you could still tell that the stakes were high, and then how it was filmed and how the soldiers were doing the tactics. You could tell the director and writers obviously got help from the military or some stunt coordinator. The director, with not much time, got what he needed to do in the art aspect, and that's why it gets a 10.
I'm going to also give it a 10 there. I think that it flowed well. I felt it was high stakes and completely engaged the whole way. Which leads on to the next one. So what about the experience and engagement? Which, again, we've said this before, it kind of flows in and ties in with the cinematography and the direction. But what was your experience of this film?
I'm going to give this a 9 because it was either jarring. You knew that that stuff was going to go down, but starting with that music clip, it kind of reminded me of Heretic with how that show started. It seems like A24 has this weird obsession with sexual stuff. It's kind of strange. But once we got through the action and the soldiering, it was a lot better with the experience. I still think if I saw this in the cinema, it would be a 10, but still 9's not a bad score.
I'm going to give it a 10 based on the things I said earlier. I think I was engaged the whole way through, and the experience was top notch. It set you on this emotional roller coaster, and I think the way it started was kind of perfect, because it got you wondering, well, what is this film going to be about, and then it hits you grippingly. So I thought it was great. Opposed to a lot of war films, it's like, here's the backstory to this soldier whilst he's fighting, and this is why the military are going here. They just bang straight into it. It was almost like a documentary in a way. I thought it was very cool. So I'm giving it a 10. What about its point of difference and its X factor?
I'm actually going to give this a 10 because its X factor is that it shows more the brutality of war and the violence, and it doesn't muck around of showing that if you are in an actual war zone, it's not going to hold your hand. And that's what I actually like about this film. Even though I didn't give the story a high score, I actually like that it focuses more of the soldiering. We didn't learn a lot about the character's backstory, but that's okay because it's more about seeing what an actual soldier's job is. And we see it in other movies, but not as smoothly and good in this movie. So yeah, 10 for me.
I've given it also another 10 here. It's just different. It's a movie that gives you an experience opposed to telling a story, which is not the norm. I think it also feeds into our obsession with reality. People love reality TV. We enjoy seeing something that's real more so than we see something that's made up. And that's exactly what this was. It was completely real and an experience that it's almost like a money can't buy experience. Like you can play a video game and like you can play COD, but it's not the same as going to war.
Yeah.
This, I know the stakes weren't high. I wasn't going to die in this film, but you felt like you were there. It's as close as you can get to being there without being there. It makes me think, and I know there is movies like this. I'd like to see maybe one like that, like a ride-along type movie with police officers and like a real raw experience. And maybe instead of like made up, like something made up, like an actual day of what happened to someone that went on a ride-along. I think that would be cool. So yeah, that's me on a tangent. So another 10. What about the ending satisfaction? So I do think the film came to a bit of an abrupt end.
Yeah.
And then there is that element of, oh, I want to know what happened next. But, they kind of can't reveal too much. So what do you think about the ending? How satisfying was it?
I'm going to give this an 8. I was kind of wanting more, but I guess that's what happened. This is the memories of the people that actually did it. So I was like, it's an ending that you can't really argue with because it's based on a true story. But it's funny how they show the acting, and it's like, oh, we can't show you the actual soldier that they're compared to, so you don't even know that the casting choices are actually respective to the actual soldier. But I actually like the ending more because it doesn't overstay its welcome, even though I would have liked to, wanted more, but it didn't do something fancy or unrealistic. It stayed true, unlike the Thunderbolts.
I think on reflection, I think the ending is what it needed to be. But I'm going to give it a 7 because my first instance when the film finished, I was like, oh, there's more here. I need to talk about this. What happens next? But it's not until later on it kind of sets in that there's a reason why they did this. So the initial ending satisfaction, I'm going to give it a 7 because I think most people, when that film ended, they're like, oh, is that it? Like, they're not even going to tell us why they were there. Like, what happened? What about the bad guys? They get them? And it almost seemed like this really underwhelming mission, but that's how intense it can be. So initially, I'm going to give it a 7. But on reflection, it was a good ending, but that's how I felt at the end of the movie. What about the premise or attractions? How likely do you think other people this seems to the average Joe?
I'm gonna go with 7 because not everyone's gonna want to see a war movie, but I do think it is worth watching for just the visuals, the war. So it's a tricky one because it's not like Mission Impossible that I think that's more recommendable than this movie.
I'd give it a 6, I think. If people only saw the trailer, they're going to think it's just another war film, and that's not for everyone. I think moving to the next section, how recommendable it is. That's 2-1 away. It's easier to recommend than if you just showed someone the trailer. I don't think they would think much of it. You need to explain that, hey, it's an experience, go see it. So 6 as its attractions, I think people just go, another war movie, whatever. Okay, the casting and performances here. So as I said, there's a couple of notable characters, a few new actors I hadn't seen before. How good did they do portraying soldiers?
I guess the 8, they did a fine job, but I think it's more the warfare elements. They did the job that was required, and in the short time that they were there, the performances served their purpose.
I'm going to give it a 9. I think I felt that they were soldiers. I think they resembled it well. I think even when they were going through troubled times, they didn't seem like actors pretending to be soldiers. That seemed natural. I think they're kind of like freakouts, or when they just needed a moment, or when they were, all that is obviously reflective of what it's like to be at war, because they obviously consulted with soldiers that had been there and they said, no, that's how it's like. So I can't say I think otherwise because I haven't been there. So I think they portrayed it in a way that felt real. Where I think if some of those war movies where you get actors, they're very dramatic, like, oh, just go on without me. And, and it's like, but this just seemed very, very real. And I'm guessing that's because it was real opposed to being dramatized. So I think they did a very good job of making me believe that they were in fact soldiers, which is what they were there to do. What about its recommendability to others?
I actually think it's a 10 because even though I don't think it's attractive, I think everyone needs to see this movie because of the brutality and just to realize how lucky we are that war isn't as common anymore, and to realize that war isn't something that we should want. That's what I got from it. So I think it's a movie that you definitely need to see and appreciate for the art and spectacle that it is. Even though the story isn't there, it's still a movie that it's a journeyful movie.
I'm going to give it a 9 for recommendability others because I'm aware that there's some people that just don't want gore. So I'm ruling them out as the one people that I don't think I'd recommend it to. If anyone else that has no issue with gore, I think it's an experience everyone's got to see. So it leads us to our last one, genre points. So I guess we're talking war films. How good is it as a war film?
I'm going to give this a 9. I think for what it's trying to do, it excels at. It's not going for a storyline. It's not going for anything else. But if you compare it to Black Hawk Down, Saving Private Ryan, it's not as good as those movies, but those movies go for 2 hours. Their story is better, but still for what it's trying to do, it excels at and does it amazingly.
I'm giving it a 10. I think it's the best war film I've ever seen. I'm usually not a fan of war films. I like it because it wasn't, trying to convince us why this evil power wants to destroy the world or giving us a historical lesson in World War I and II. It was just, here's an experience it and move on. And that was it. So I think it was better than any other war film because of that. Because I didn't need to buy into the characters. There was no real heroes and villains. There was no who's your favorite soldier and who do you want to live and die. It was like we were standing there watching it through lenses and we were just another soldier in the room. So I thought that was really cool. So let's tally them up. I think it's looking like it's going to be somewhere pretty high. So for Jake, we're looking at a 5, then a 9, then a 10, then a 9, then another 10, then an 8, then a 7, plus an 8, plus a 10, plus a 9, giving you a grand total of 85. Higher than Mission Impossible. For me, got a lot of 10s in here, maybe the most I've ever given out. So 7, 10, 10, 10, 10, 7, 6, 9, 9, and a 10 for a total of 88. So
wow.
Still, I don't know if how does something crack the 90s? How do you get that many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 10s and 2 9s, and it's still not a 90 just because it just goes to show no film's perfect. It's still even.
I think the 6 kind of and the 5 hurt it, yeah.
Yeah, so like it goes to show that even if a film excels in some parts, there's always somewhere where it's going to lack, and that's only fair. I don't think we're ever going to see a perfect film.
Yeah.
There's a film out there that's going to be the best film ever made, but there's never going to be a perfect film.
Yes.
So 88. So 88 and 85.
Pretty good.
Very, very good scores.
It's a good movie.
Any final comments on that before we move to our next section?
If you're looking for a war movie to watch that has a little bit more realism and you kind of don't want to focus on the storyline, this is the movie for you. It's definitely need to watch it. You need to prioritize it over anything that you're currently watching. And it's not a long movie at all. It does its runtime justice, and you won't be disappointed, and you will definitely have fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So we'll go with our next segment Jacob wanted to talk about what makes a TV or movie stand out for me and for him. So do you want to kick us off first, Jacob, and tell us what makes something stand out for you, whether it's the premise, the actor, the streaming service it comes out on? Like, what to you makes a movie or show stand out?
Well, for me, I think it has to do something unique and stand out. Or it's becoming harder to get nowadays. There's a lot of things that copy off each other, but I think it has to do that. It has to have obviously a decent storyline, but acting and storyline, and it has to, I guess, balance out all of its elements for me. But I think uniqueness is the main thing I look for.
Yeah, I think what attracts me to a movie or show, it's usually the actors help, and then the premise is a big part. What makes me really like something is the uniqueness. So uniqueness helps something stand out in the beginning, but there's a lot of unique movies that I don't give a chance because I go, well, I don't really know who's in it. That doesn't sound that good. But then when someone else sees it and goes, hey, you got to watch this. Like, this is different. Kind of like what we were just talking about Warfare. Then that will get me there, but then you need someone else's recommendation to find those hidden gems. So out of if there's billboards in front of me or posters or trailers, it's going to be the actor or actresses and the premise that gets me interested, but the uniqueness is what makes me stick around. Because I really like a unique story or someone that does something different, because we live in a world of things being regurgitated, rebooted, and redone. Yes. I like it when we see something new, but what comes with that is a lot of garbage too. You try unique and it gets wild. So you got to take the good with the bad in that sense, but I'd probably rather us test the limits and be unique and get it wrong half the time than to just regurgitate the same stuff over and over.
What would you say has been a successful, unique premise that you've enjoyed lately? For me, it's probably been Fallout and Severance.
I've enjoyed Severance. I've not seen much of it as you have, but it does seem like a different kind of, I'm going to say sci-fi, or from what I've seen of it so far. Fallout, it's not unique in the sense because the games exist, but if you hadn't played the games, which I haven't, the whole concept is different. I think it's a different spin on the apocalypse. In terms of movies, we've been just talking about Warfare. Really thought that was a unique experience. I actually really liked the Robbie Williams movie. I think the Better Man film, where it was a biopic that was kind of a mix between a musical and not a musical, but then the main character was played by a CGI monkey. I thought that was a different view of doing something, and the whole idea that Robbie Williams didn't think that he saw himself as a monkey and he felt that resembled him better than getting an actor, I thought was really cool. Plus, it allowed him to voice himself the whole way through and not need to cast someone and go, hope he looks like you, I hope he sounds like him. As soon as you add CGI, it can be like him. So I thought that was someone taking a gamble and getting it right. That movie has mixed reviews. It also may have something with the fact that Robbie Williams isn't popular everywhere around the world, but I thought that was a cool gamble that they took.
So you preferred Better Man to Will Philip Williams' Lego movie?
Oh, yes, that's another example of a movie I thought took a gamble and got it wrong. So the Pharrell Williams Brick by Brick movie, where he got the whole movie done in Lego, because he obviously must be a fan of Lego, but he thought that it could, the best way to describe his story. I actually think it didn't work in that sense because, it had underneath, it had a lot of interviews with people. So then it had this is Jay-Z, or they're interviewing Mary J. Blige. But some of those names I couldn't picture the face, and you're looking at this Lego character, so you can't picture it. So I actually thought it took away from the movie. But if it was just a biopic, where if it was just a documentary about him, I also think that it wouldn't have worked. Maybe they could have did a mix of the two. The interviews could have been real, and then some of the more imaginative scenes where he's envisioning music and seeing color around him, that could have worked well with Lego. But yeah, so that was. I'm glad they took a risk and done something different because it made a movie that probably would have been. I wouldn't have even given a chance. I watched it. Did I think it was good? Not really, but I would at least gave it a watch because it was unique. So yeah, I think they're two good examples to compare of biopic type movies that have came out recently in experimental styles.
Yes.
What about you? Anything else you can think of that you enjoyed recently that was experimental or unique?
That was unique. What was it called? It has Denzel Washington's son in it.
Not like Tenet or something, or
Tenet. He was in that too. Yeah.
Yeah, Tenet was a pretty unique movie. I think any of those type of Interstellar, Tenet, Christopher Nolan general films are, I like it because Christopher Nolan does push the limits there and tries new things. I think that's cool. I thought of one just before. Joker 2, that was an example of being experimental, and considering how much I loved the first film, I don't think the second one was horrible. I think the actual musical element was cool and unique. I just think the direction they went with the film and the storyline was what hurt it. I actually think the musical element made it cool. I actually think they could have emphasized it more and made it a bigger deal of it, and it would have been better. Yeah. But it tried to bend of what's real and not real, and in the end, you left kind of confused. Where I would have preferred if it was all, hey, this is all in his head. He's imagining every part of the musical scene because he's crazy. But, it didn't seem to want to do that. So, yeah, that's a movie that was unique that, I don't know, I don't think many people have watched that movie a second time or even want to acknowledge its existence, which is sad because the Joker 1 is like a lot of people's top 10 favourite films of all time.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing we thought we'd do is a versus style battle. So this is inspired by some other YouTubers that Jacob was watching the other day that were doing which do you think is going to be better scenario between Doomsday and Dune Messiah. So we've made a list of some comparable films and we're going to chat between us to see which one we think is better of the two. No right or wrong answers, just trying to spark some conversations.
Yeah.
So we've got, in the first comparison we got here is Everything Everywhere All at Once from 2022 versus Parasite. So I believe they're from the same director and both have some form of subtitles. I can either first admit I haven't seen either of these, so I'm going to find it hard to compare. But based on from what I've heard, I think Everything Everywhere All at Once is more likely my cup of tea.
Yeah, I haven't seen Parasite, and Everything All at Once is a unique concept, and I think that one.
Yeah, I know Parasite won. I think they both won the awards, whatever the best picture for that year that they were running. So they're probably very comparable. I believe Parasite's more of it's a horror film, or it's like, I know. I think it's probably more artsy, where Everything Everywhere at Once is more like sciencey. So I'm going to lean towards that. It's a bit unfair. I haven't seen either of them. Next on the list, one of our favourite films to talk about is Dune Part 1 versus Oppenheimer. So one from 2001, the other from 2020. Sorry, 2021, the other from 2023. Which is the better of the two films?
Well, personally, I think Oppenheimer is, even though you could argue it's not a lot happens, but I actually enjoyed Oppenheimer more than Dune 1 because Dune 1 isn't really a good movie, so I think Oppenheimer won.
It's hard for me because I am not the biggest fan of science fiction, and I do like true stories, so I lean towards Oppenheimer. Would I watch out of these two films? Which am I more likely to watch a second time? Maybe Dune, just because there's follow-up films, and I might want to refresh my memory before I see them. But I think standalone Oppenheimer was a superior film. And probably a better experience. I know people go on about Dune, like how good are the visuals, how good is it? seriously, it's desert and a sandworm. Like, come on. Like, if that's what impresses you, like, come on. But in saying that, people are overly impressed by Avatar. Like, that to me is just pretty pictures. That play a video game if you want that. Again, we're talking about warfare. If you want to see a film that's visually stunning, that's as close as it gets. That is what is going on. That's the real world, opposed to basically just a simulation of space. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not torn up by when people say a film's visually stunning in that sense.
Yeah.
Or even Mission Impossible, that people jumping out of planes and things getting thrown around, like that is a visually stunning film. Not just, hey, let's create CGI on a computer and show this crazy big beast and be like, oh, just make the beast bigger then, and then people are going to be impressed if that's all it takes. Just make a Godzilla film where Godzilla's just like 4 times as big and be like, oh, the CGI, amazing. Like, visually, how big is Godzilla? Like, yeah, it gets annoying. Okay, number 3 on our list, we've got Barbie versus Super Mario. Both from the same year. Super Mario made more money. Barbie was, the talk of the town for a very long time. Which is the better of the two films?
Well, I'm going to say Super Mario because I haven't actually seen Barbie, and I actually think Super Mario is an excellent video game movie. It actually is a good movie with Jack Black as a video game movie. He nails the performance of Bowser, and Mario's Chris Pratt. I enjoyed his performance, and the movie as a whole is just a fun, entertaining movie, and have to go with this one over Barbie.
Super Mario was, one of my favorite films of that year, probably the best video game adaptation, a movie people thought was going to be really bad for a long time, criticizing Chris Pratt being the voice of Mario, but it was such a good film. But Barbie to me is bigger than a film. I actually think it was a cultural phenomenon. There was a snapshot in time when Barbie memes and that was everywhere, and I still see scenes from that movie. I think it's culturally massive, and I think it will surpass Super Mario in terms of when in 20 years' time when people think about films, they'll forget Super Mario, I think. And I think people are like, oh yeah, remember when they made that Barbie film? But that Barbie film does have lots of issues that annoy the crap out of me, especially the ending. But the 90% of that film was like, this is insane. Like, when I heard the premise of the Barbie film, I'm like, this is going to be the worst movie ever made. How the hell do you make a movie of this? But it was just a ride. It was an experience, and it was a cultural phenomenon. So I'm going to go with Barbie with this.
Will they make a sequel?
Don't think so. Don't think it needs to. I think they just make that one because it is ridiculous. But it's just a journey. It's like there's no. I'm not saying that it's a great movie. It's just a lot of fun, and I've watched it several times, and I thought it was fun and unique. I think they tested the boundaries and went unique. Okay, Spider-Man No Way Home from 2021 or Avengers Endgame from 2019?
That's a tough one now. I'm actually going to go Spider-Man No Way Home because I think for the stage of the MCU, Spider-Man No Way Home was a breath of fresh air. We got the iconic moment with the three Spider-Man doing the meme. I know Avengers Endgame also has moments, but to me, I was annoyed that it is a predictable movie because it's when Thanos dies. What to me, Infinity Wars was such an awesome movie, and then Endgame disappointingly ended that. So for me, I think Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yep, I'm in favour of the same thing. I'm biased towards Spider-Man. I'm a big fan. I thought the film was made to please the people for once. I think Marvel have been guilty of trying to, feed their own ego or come up with some unique storyline or be woke or whatever other agenda. This kind of fed and did exactly what people wanted. Even though everyone thought it was going to happen, you never knew until you saw it. So I think it fed what people wanted. I think it linked a lot of the Spider-Man universes together. And it's also a standalone in a sense where the other film, where Avengers Endgame is one, it's a part 2.
Yeah.
And it's also a team up, which is very hard to compare team ups. But I'm not blown away by 400 team up characters put together having one big fight scene. I thought the 3 Spider-Mans is way more impressive for me. Okay, what about The Batman from 2022 versus Joker from 2019?
As individual films, I'm gonna have to go with the Joker, even though I love the detectiveness in the Batman. The Joker was absolutely the movie we needed to deal with mental health with Arthur Fleck, Joaquin Phoenix. The performance in the Joker was very impressive, and the movie was just a masterpiece of filmmaking. I know a lot of people didn't like because it wasn't the proper Joker. He's not really a Joker because of what happens in the second movie, but for what was necessary for the time, it's a blast of the movie, and yeah, Joker.
I'm going to go with The Batman. I think the Joker culturally was a bigger film and had more impact, but I enjoyed watching The Batman more. The Joker, even though I work in mental health and I thought the movie did a great job for it, I could only watch it so many times where I really enjoyed this Batman film. For a franchise that has so many remakes, this somehow stood above the rest. I actually think I like it. I'm still a big fan of the Christopher Nolan's Batman's trilogy. I think that this as a standalone is better than any of those individual films. So I just really, really like it more. Okay, what about Top Gun Maverick or Mission Impossible Fallout?
They're tough ones, but I'm going to have to go Mission Impossible Fallout. It's arguably the best of the franchise, and I would agree it is a spectacular movie and can't argue that it is a well worth journey, and it is definitely a impossible one. And even though Top Gun Maverick is an awesome movie as well, I think if you ask Tom Cruise, people what Tom Cruise is more known for, I'm pretty sure they would say Ethan Hunt.
I'm going to go Top Gun Maverick. This movie was all out enjoyable, and I'd watch it again. It's a bit unfair because I haven't seen that particular Mission Impossible. I've seen a few others, and I think they're all very good, but I think I would more likely go back to watching, Top Gun Maverick. I also think it, as well, bonus points for being a rare sequel that's better than the original. So next on the list, we've got Bohemian Rhapsody from 2018 or Elvis from 2022.
Mike, I believe Elvis because Elvis showed a different side of the character, showed more about his manager, even though the title is Elvis, but I think it's an excellent movie and kind of makes you sympathize with Elvis more. Was it true? Who knows, but definitely enjoyed the Elvis film.
I'm going to go Bohemian Rhapsody because I felt like it completed the picture and what I wanted to know about Freddie Mercury and Queen, where Elvis, I said, it focused probably more on the Colonel and his manager and less on Elvis, and I probably wanted to know more about Elvis, and I felt I needed to do research where I thought that Bohemian Rhapsody kind of covered it all for me. Obviously, it had probably more musical moments in it. I've seen another Elvis film since called Priscilla, which focuses on the life of his wife and how she was treated by Elvis, and it kind of conflicts with the movie of, she portrays him as being a bit of a monster, and the movie portrays the Colonel being the monster, so I'm kind of torn on the fence of which is right, which is wrong. Where Bohemian Rhapsody, I thought, just kind of did a really good job of portraying Queen and the impact they had, and Freddie Mercury being a gay Pakistani Englishman and the way he kind of changed culture and made gay culture being fine and being in the limelight. So I thought it was a really good job. So last one on the list, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or Thor Ragnarok.
I'm going to have to go with Thor Ragnarok. This is definitely the best Thor movie. It is so entertaining to watch. It is so This is when Marvel was in its fullest ultimate power, and Thor: Love and Thunder. Thor Ragnarok is definitely one of the best Marvel films when it comes to nailing comedy, action, and story. And I think it definitely is better than Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yeah, I think they're both very, very similar movies in terms of enjoyment for me. I think Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was a unique story, but did they try and tug on the heartstrings of people
Yes,
by
they
showing, the cute rocket? With Thor Ragnarok, I thought was a really good story. I think, but then it's kind of tarnished by Love and Thunder.
It is.
I'm gonna go Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I think if I had to pick a movie tomorrow, which one I'd want to watch out of those two, I'm gonna pick Guardians of the Galaxy because I can't split them to which one I think is better or worse. It's just gonna go on which one I'm more likely to want to watch a second time. Okay, well that is the list. Any other topics or questions you want to talk about before we wrap things up?
So with the movie season going, do you find this year harder for the top 5 list, or do you find it easier? Because I'm actually more excited for making the list this year. I actually thought last year was not that enjoyable to watch movies.
I think I'm going to find it easier because I've seen less movies, and I've kind of, having watched so many last year, it left a sour taste in my mouth where I'm less impressed by things. So the movies that stand out are generally, they stand out well. So where last year I watched so many movies, they kind of just all kind of blended into one, and I thought, my top 5 stood out, but then the next lot were all kind of like average, like really average. Well, I think this year I picked and chose the films I liked, and I've enjoyed movies more. I've seen more that I've liked, and I've seen the movies I've wanted to see instead of just seeing everything. Yes, I'm going to miss out on the hidden gems by doing that, but I discovered last year out of watching 150 films, there wasn't that many hidden gems. So maybe I'm better off just picking and choosing what I like or trusting other people's recommendations.
So far, I don't know if you would have the same list I do, but if I had to guess what would be in your top 5 so far, it would be Mikey 17 or Mickey 17.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible and Warfare.
Let's have a look. I actually haven't added Warfare to my list yet, unfairly. So yeah, at the moment in no particular order, because I think they'll shuffle around. I'm looking at Mikey 17, Thunderbolts, Mission Impossible, Better Man, and A Complete Unknown. I think Warfare might push itself up to number 1 or 2. So The Complete Unknown probably won't stay in there, only because I think it'll just naturally get pushed out. We've still got a few big movies coming out. I haven't seen Lilo and Stitch, the live action yet. I don't know if I'll make my top 5, but that's a movie I'm looking forward to seeing soon. There's something massive coming out really soon. What is it?
In June is The Karate Kid and also the John Wick movie.
It's Superman's the one I'm thinking of. I keep forgetting about that. So I'm looking forward to Superman. So I think that's a good chance of maybe pushing something out of the top 5.
So far for my list, I have 3 movies. The movies would be Thunderbolts, Mission Impossible, and Mikey 17, and probably Warfare.
Yeah, I think we're similar list. It looks like you picked out things that you thought were unique as well. Like Mikey 17 to me was a unique. It's not unique, but it felt unique. Other people thought about this idea of, inhabiting other planets, but I think they just did a more fun job of it. So Mikey 17, I think is I just can't see that dropping out of the top 5 at any point, anytime soon.
Yeah, and also with TV shows, I'm finding it hard to get. Normally, I find it easier with TV shows, but this year it's not the case.
Yeah, I haven't really watched a whole lot of new TV shows this year, which was the same as last year. I have watched a lot more TV shows, but they're not new. So I might have to start looking for new ones to watch that got released this year to try and build up that list because I've kind of been visiting older stuff.
Yeah.
But as always, let us know what your thoughts about Warfare are. Be very curious to know. Comment down when the live stream is finished. As always, like and subscribe, and see you in the next one. Bye
See ya.
bye.